You are welcome to yet another episode of HN What's Your Say? The #1 listening show, where we discuss real issues with real people like you. We are still featuring R. Kelly. Real name Robert Sylvester Kelly. Also known as the R&B King. When the Surviving R. Kelly documentary first aired, it was marketed to the world as a raw, unfiltered and authentic account of the alleged victim stories. The producers and mainstream media insisted that this was a heartfelt effort to give a voice to those who claimed to have been silenced for decades. Millions tuned in believing they were witnessing truth and justice unfold before their eyes. But everything changed the moment the truth came to light. The moment we learned that the very participants who appeared in that documentary, the so-called victims and their families, were paid $1,500 each to take part and play their roles.
So you're saying this is not, because when this first came out to me, I thought maybe it was just a money grab, because people do things for money.
I made $1,000.
This single fact shattered the credibility of not only the documentary itself but also of the government's entire case against R. Kelly. Think about it. Real victims do not need to be paid actors to tell their stories. Genuine pain, genuine trauma and genuine pursuit of justice do not come with a price tag. When someone is truly a victim, they speak out because they seek healing, accountability and protection for others. Not because they are looking for a paycheck. So we must ask, if these individuals were truly victims, why was there a financial transaction involved at all? The answer is simple and deeply disturbing. The moment money entered the equation, the narrative stopped being about truth and became about performance. The participants weren't just sharing their experiences. They were delivering a show, carefully scripted and edited for maximum emotional impact to sway public opinion against one man, R. Kelly. And let us be clear, this was not just any show. It was a carefully orchestrated public campaign designed to destroy R. Kelly's reputation long before he ever set foot inside a courtroom. Here's where things get even more troubling. These very same individuals who were paid to appear in Surviving R. Kelly were later brought into court by the government. Not only as uncharged claimants but also as key witnesses to secure convictions against R. Kelly. In other words, the prosecution recycled the actors from a paid documentary, presenting them to a jury as if they were credible, unbiased and authentic victims. This is a staggering violation of basic justice. When witnesses are financially compensated to tell a certain story on camera, and then later present that same story under oath, the entire foundation of their testimony becomes compromised. Any competent court system would immediately raise red flags about conflicts of interest, potential coaching and outright fabrication. The fact that the government allowed and even relied on these same individuals reveals just how weak their case truly was. If the accusations against R. Kelly were genuinely supported by hard evidence, they wouldn't have needed to lean on the dramatized narratives of a television series. The line between entertainment and justice was blurred beyond recognition. Instead of seeking truth, the prosecution sought ratings and headlines, using a Netflix series as a substitute for real investigation. By the time R. Kelly went to trial, the damage had already been done. Millions of viewers had been emotionally manipulated by a documentary that presented itself as fact but was in reality a carefully crafted performance. When jurors entered the courtroom, they were not coming in with a clean slate. They were carrying the emotional baggage of scenes they had likely already seen or heard about from the series, scenes that were paid for, rehearsed and edited for a dramatic effect. The government's strategy was clear. Create public outrage through a TV show. Use that outrage to pressure courts, judges and even jurors. Bring the same paid participants into court as if they were untainted and honest witnesses. This tactic violated the very principles of due process and fair trial. How can a man receive justice when the so-called evidence against him is built on the foundation of a commercialized media production? Let's examine the $1,500 payment. To some, this may seem like a small amount, but its significance cannot be overstated. It represents proof of bias and motivation. Consider this. In the criminal justice system, any witness who has a financial incentive to testify is automatically scrutinized for credibility. It's a fundamental rule of law. Paid informants, for instance, are often heavily challenged by defense attorneys because their testimony could be swayed by money. Now, imagine an entire group of witnesses being paid in advance to deliver a specific narrative on television, and then using that same narrative in court as if it were genuine untainted truth. This is no different from actors reading a script. The $1,500 was not simply a reimbursement for travel or accommodations. It was compensation for a performance. And when performances are presented as evidence, justice is not just compromised. It is completely destroyed. The tragedy here is multi-layered. Not only was R. Kelly's reputation tarnished, but the entire public was deceived. Families, fans, and even casual viewers were manipulated into believing a narrative built on shaky foundations. And let's not forget, this false narrative didn't just stop at public opinion. It directly impacted the legal process. Judges and jurors allowed the lines between fact and fiction to blur so completely that they treated television storytelling as equivalent to sworn testimony. The result? A man was stripped of his freedom based largely on performances and not proof. What's worse is the precedent this sets. If this strategy is allowed to stand, any future high-profile case can be tried in the court of public opinion first, using paid actors and dramatic editing before it ever reaches an actual courtroom. This is not justice. It's a spectacle. Real justice is supposed to be built on facts, evidence, and unbiased witnesses. If the government had genuine, verifiable evidence of crimes, they wouldn't need to rely on a Netflix special to make their case. But instead of presenting hard evidence, things like documented police reports, physical proof, or consistent testimony from credible sources, they leaned on a reality show. Ask yourself, why weren't these alleged victims willing to testify until after they appeared on a paid program? Why did the government use participants from the documentary instead of independently verified witnesses? Why did the trial feel more like an extension of the show rather than a search for truth? The answer is that this was never about truth. It was about conviction by perception, not conviction by evidence. It is deeply shameful that the very individuals who were financially compensated to perform for a global audience were later elevated to the role of government witnesses. This is a blatant conflict of interest. Their testimony should have been disqualified the moment their participation in the documentary and the payments they received came to light. Instead, the government doubled down pretending that this information didn't matter, because they knew their entire case hinged on these so-called victims. This is why so many people have lost faith in the justice system. When the government itself blurs the line between truth and fiction, when it willingly uses paid performances to destroy a man's life, it sends a message to every citizen: your freedom is only as secure as the next headline. Beyond the legal implications, there's also a human tragedy here. R. Kelly has spent decades building a legacy through his music. His art has inspired millions around the world. But that legacy was destroyed not by irrefutable evidence, but by a television show. A show whose participants were paid to act out a narrative. Imagine dedicating your entire life to your craft, only to have it ripped away by a media spectacle. Imagine sitting in a courtroom, listening to people you once trusted repeat lines they were literally compensated to deliver. That is the reality R. Kelly has faced. And it is a reality that no one, regardless of fame or status, should ever have to endure. In any case, the day it was revealed that the participants of Surviving R. Kelly were paid $1,500 each to appear on the show was the day the credibility of their stories completely crumbled. That is all we had for you today on HN What's Your Say? To keep updated whenever we post a new video, subscribe to this channel now. Also remember to hit the bell icon and enable notifications. And feel free to share your opinions with us in the comment section below, and let us know if you would like us to publish your views in our next release. We value all our subscribers' opinions.